welcome everybody to the After Dark Show. I'm Don Rogers. Joining me tonight is a fairly new friend of mine, and I've actually met her through the X Spiritual panel. She goes by the handle Samantha Consciously. She is one half of the Metaphysical Phat Podcast, which is absolutely wonderful. Like I said, she's been on the Spiritual X panel. She was actually just on BG Cast on Wednesday, and if you guys haven't seen that, go check that out because that was a phenomenal interview. I was like glued to it, and Spinja was actually upset because she had to leave just as you guys were finishing, but you guys wrapped up at like the same time, so she was soothed because she was going to be upset if she had to miss that because it was that damn good. So thank you guys for that. I'm just going to say that. But you can also catch her on X under Samantha Consciously. So I'm just going to go ahead and bring her on because we've already started chit-chatting in the back, and I just want to kind of pick up and rock this out. So, Sam, welcome to the After Dark Show, and thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me, Don. I'm really excited actually to be here tonight. Yeah, we've already kind of hit it off, haven't we?
Oh, absolutely. Like we were just talking about other stages of consciousness before we even started. And this is a good way to start since we're talking about consciousness. This is my friend Lee. He went by the name Cheech. If people have watched the show before, I was talking about him. He actually just received a double lung transplant. And the question he had for you, because he saw your name and knew that you knew about consciousness, is if you get a transplant, like he just got a double lung transplant, like I said, is it possible that the energies carry over and you can actually pick up things or signs from the other person? And I actually asked this in the chat. Like I'm sure everybody's figured out we talk behind the scenes a lot, right? And I know Diana's in the chat, and this was her response, right? She said, literally, it's the metaphysical science of DNA, 100%. He'll be carrying that person with him, and it's best to honor and welcome them. People have reported personality shifts because of the new person intake, new food cravings, and just habits. All kinds of syncs. This person will happen. So I know you agreed with what she had to say, but I'd love to get your wording of it because it's an absolutely fascinating subject. And, I actually, from a motorcycle accident, have somebody else's tendons in my leg, right?
Wow.
So it actually kind of was like, I've never noticed, but I wonder. So what would your take be on, like, can you pick up the energies, habits, and frequency of the person that you get a donation from?
Right. So just so we know, I'm not an absolute expert on this, but I can come at it from my own understanding of consciousness and how it kind of works. I've also done a little bit of research into this. Don't ask me why. I just found it interesting years and years ago. And I remember reading one case study, and it was a lady who was actually a lesbian. And she ended up receiving a heart transplant from this woman. And this woman, she died quite young. But she was absolutely man mad. She just loved men. And what happened was, after she'd had this kind of transplant, this lady went from being a lesbian to actually being heterosexual, and kind of passed it. Even though she'd gone like 19 years, she'd been convinced she was a lesbian. She didn't have any even from being like 5 or something ridiculous. She'd had no, prior inclinations of liking men, and she just kind of, literally just from waking up, there was like this immediate change. And there's been other kind of reported cases where they've taken on, like Diana was saying, certain like characteristics, certain tendencies. I would say you could even get things like addiction and trauma. So the way that I look at the cells of the body, coming at it from a shamanic point of view, when you start to do like a little meditation, you go inwards basically, and you can get to the point where you can see the cells and connect to the cells and all the different parts of your body. And it's like consciousness grids almost within you. So you've got the individual cells that have got their own consciousness. and then they group together to make an organ, which is like a person in its own right. You know, if you're looking at it from as above, so below. So if you're going to get somebody's organ, you're going to get the stored memories, the stored experiences, preferences, trauma, anything that's held within that tissue. Because if you think there's the fascia covers everything in the body, and that's where we hold any emotional trauma and our experiences and things like that. So if they've had any kind of issues, that could potentially be put in that person's body as well. But that's not to say it's necessarily going to come out. I think it depends on the person, the frequency match, the person's level of consciousness. But I would say with intention, if you were to maybe do a meditative practice where you were going to like go into that organ, you could potentially, like Diana was saying, set a space, like a container, where you're essentially introducing yourself to them and kind of building a connection, because the essence of that person is going to be in there. It's got that person's DNA. And as we know, everything's stored in the DNA, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I'm going to get a little further into this because this is an absolutely fascinating take that you've put forward on it. What is happening with him is every time he is able to sit in silence and quiet your mind and basically get into that meditative state, or just, thinking about life because he just had a near life experience.
Yeah.
When he silences his mind and everything is calm, he said he can hear this lyrical, almost haunting classical music whistling, right? It's actually audible to him. He doesn't know if it's audible to anyone else, but he's wondering if it was part of the other person's personality, that they were musical, or if it's something he's picking up or a message. And at home, we were actually talking about this. So I'm going to put out two different perspectives here. Young William, we talk about the metaphysical, and I kind of forget sometimes that he's 17. And he's like, well, could he have been connecting to his higher self because he's at such a state of peace now that he's made it through that near-death experience? So I just wanted to know which way you leaned, or if you had something different.
I mean, it's fascinating, really. I know from what you've said before when you were the show, he's had a phenomenal kind of recovery, and he's done a lot of work prior to that. Did you say he'd been using like entheogens as well?
Yeah, he had been on several deep journeys before the operation, and I think one or two after.
And I think when you go through something like that, it rewires your brain, not just from the perspective of going on the journeys, because that's going to be a deep acceptance of the situation you're in. Because whenever we have any of these kind of like health emergencies, you look at it from like a shamanic point of view, it's like a call to wake up, basically. And you've got a choice. You either go into it and you embrace it and you heal yourself, or you check out. And that's kind of what happened, So he's obviously had some kind of call to spiritual arms, and he's had to go and do the work, which he's definitely done. And because he's so aware and awake now, I think he's able to tap into things on a deeper level. He's more aware. And when you go into that silence and you still the mind chatter, you can really hear what's going on underneath. And, I've got a few, I don't know for sure, I can only speculate. So if he's hearing like kind of a musical thing, we all have our own song, basically. So the people in like the Huna tradition, they would say that we're all born with our own unique song. And when we come into this life, all the villagers would gather round and they would sing this person's song. And they would sing it again when they became a man or a woman, and they would sing it again when they died. Now, the only other time they would sing this song is if they lost their way. So they wouldn't kind of like punish people in the way that we would, like in a punitive way. So say if somebody was acting out, or they were doing that thing like stealing, or I don't know, whatever, they'd bring this person to like the center of the village, and they would all sit round this person and sing them the song. And basically what they're doing is they're reminding them of who they are, because the song that they come in with is is basically the audible representation of what their soul sounds like. So he could even potentially be listening to this person's soul, or he could just be getting like different frequencies. He's definitely getting some clairaudience going on anyway. I don't know if that's new since the experience or not, you know?
It is. It's a very, very haunting song. I get goosebumps. It's very classical. I never heard this type of music before. So it's obvious it's a new experience for me.
Yeah. I mean, maybe see if you could find something that it's similar to. It could be that this person was a classical music aficionado. I don't know if you can get hold of the person's family. Maybe it could be something to ask them for clarification. Because I mean, I know it's a really sad situation when you get an organ, isn't it? It's part of the cycle of life, basically. Somebody's got to leave to give you that. But I know when I was reading into it, a lot of the families are really happy to get that feedback from people that have received the organs, because it's like their loved ones are living on still, you know. They've still got purpose.
I believe that too. Like I actually kind of made the lady at the health office laugh when I was living in Ontario. They were like, "Would you like to be an organ donor?" And I was like, "Look, lady, if there's anything left when I'm done with it that works and you can make use of it, y'all can have it." Right. And she's just killing herself. And I was like, "What?" And she's like, "Nobody ever makes me laugh. This job is so boring. Thank you." And she was just ecstatic that I made a smart ass joke about it. And I was like, well, it's the way I look at it. Like, I don't want to be harvested. I don't want my shit sold to anybody. But if you guys can help somebody, like somebody just helped my buddy, yeah, go ahead, take it. Right? I'm done with it.
Yeah. It's all to do with intention, isn't it? Like you said. I mean, if you see these things, have you seen those exhibitions? I forgot what it's called now. I think they're from China. And it's the nerve structure, and they've peeled away all the body, and it's literally just the nerves, and they've got all different bits and pieces of the human body. And part of me is like, have these people actually consented for this to happen? Because I know there's a lot of human rights abuses, isn't there? And you don't really want that to happen. But like you said, if you can help somebody, then it's like the ultimate gift that you're leaving, you know.
Absolutely. And like, they're still talking about this. Apparently, this was a young athlete. And like, you had alluded to it, he's had a ridiculous recovery. He's supposed to still be in a coma, right? But he's actually at home texting on the show right now. Like, it's phenomenal. It's a miracle. I asked Source for it. I know a lot of people who knew what was going on asked Source for it, and he came through it better than anybody expected. His wife is a nurse, and the day that he was supposed to be in a coma, I was like, what the hell? She's like, he's awake. She texted me, he's awake. And I'm like, what the hell? So I called and I hear him in the background. I'm like, isn't he supposed to be in a coma? And she's like, that's what I thought. Right. And like, it was just like, that's what everybody thought. Why are you awake? Like, what the hell's going on? But no, he's freaking Superman. I don't know what else to say.
Do you know what though? I do think he's got a purpose. Just tapping into that. Yeah, I've got goosebumps from head to toe. It'll unfold, I think. He's got some interesting times ahead for him. That's what I'm gonna say.
That's awesome. Speaking of the medical system, and I know you and Steven touched on this, so we won't go too far into it, but I like to ask the same question as Steven about people's awakenings and whatnot. And I know your most recent actually involved the healthcare system. And I was wondering if we can do a quick review on that, just so everybody knows. I know most people who watch my show watch Steven's shows, but it's just fun to have the information out there. So I was wondering if not.
What my awakening recently with the healthcare system. Yeah, so I was training to be a nurse. I was just about ready qualified when COVID came. And I was, like I said in Stephen's show, I had this instance where I thought I got COVID, and I was getting worse and worse and worse. And I thought it was going to really put me clogs, actually. I got all this fear inside me. I'd been kind of looking for something for about a year before that. So I'd been through this dark night of the soul and everything, and I was just trying to come out of it at that point. And it was like my higher self came in and were like, you don't have to do this. You can choose not to be poorly. And I was like, oh yeah, I can. Within 20 minutes, we were all right. And at that point, I'd been coughing, I couldn't breathe. And it really highlighted to me when I look back on that, the all is actually mind, and we are creating reality as we go. And it was like something had just changed in me, and I'd made the conscious decision that I wasn't gonna be poorly and that wasn't going to affect me. And in doing that, it's like I broke some kind of spell. And I was awakening anyway, and I really think that happened for a reason. But what it taught me is that we're choosing the timeline that we're on all the time, because that was just one branch of the timeline. There's another timeline probably where I went and put my clogs. There's another timeline where I probably got jabbed. Do you know what I mean? And we can take control. It's malleable. Nothing is set in stone. If you know how to take control of your own life, and we do that through, like we've talked about science sovereignty, then you can affect what's happening around you. You can change the reality that you're experiencing in a very conscious way, and you become kind of the driving seat of your own life rather than being a passenger. And I think that's kind of what COVID taught me. And I started to look at things and I was like, this is just not right. I mean, I've always been kind of awake and I've always questioned things, but this just gave me it was the friction that it caused. And I do talk about friction quite a lot in our lives because it serves a purpose. And I think when we're going through these really turbulent times, and I call it this internal friction a bit, it's like that, oh, it's not quite right. You're not in alignment. It's really uncomfortable. It serves as a bit of a wake-up call to make us look deeper into things. And that's kind of what COVID did for me. So I was because I was a community nurse, but I did work in the hospital as well. So at that time, I was going out to patients and they were going, oh, I don't know what to do about this jab. And I just knew it. I was like, it didn't make sense. Just even on an intellectual level, I was like, apparently it takes years and years and years to make a jab. But they've only just found out about COVID. And now they want everybody to take this experimental jab. And I was just like, alarm bells are going. And like, I was saying to my colleagues, do you not think this is weird? Oh, no, because they've done X, Y, and Z. And they just were like, I couldn't believe it. It was like I was living in a separate reality. Like we were looking at two different things. And that was the wake-up call for me. And then I started looking at other things in the system, other treatments that were going on, things like cancer treatments with chemotherapy. And I would look at like how poorly the chemotherapy patients would get. And my mum died of cancer when I was 23. And I remember she had the chemotherapy, and it was the chemotherapy basically and the radiation that killed. It wasn't the fucking cancer. It decimated her body. And instead of, I even think like, because they said, oh, if you have the chemo, it'll give you a few more months. And I just think, do you know what? She had like maybe 5 more months than what they'd given her. I mean, that could have been a load of bollocks as well, to be fair, because we know that now. It's all corrupt. But she died in agony. She lost all of it. Do you know what I mean? She lost all of her dignity. It was like being tortured to death. And I was 23 at that point, and it was that obviously seeded something in me. And it kind of brought it all to the forefront. And I was looking at the things that I was seeing and the treatments that people were having and the medications. And I was talking to doctors and going, well, why does this happen? What's the cause of this? Blah, 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 blah. And they couldn't, when they really got down to it, they couldn't answer me. They could only give me things that they'd been told. It was like regurgitated information. And that, again, was another huge red flag for me. And it kind of kick-started this whole process of being like, why am I doing this, basically? And I was in this kind of ego tussle because I trained for years, to get this job. I really enjoyed it before COVID. We were all stuck in this kind of time warp, weren't we, where things weren't normal. We were all being pushed in different ways. So I think it served to kind of like fracture people's psyches a little bit. That's what they wanted. So there was all this kind of stuff going on at the same time. And I ended up getting chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia and other bits and pieces. And I had this, like I was talking about your friend, this big health emergency, and I was fucking fighting it down. I was like, no, I'm going to work. And I'd end up like taking months off, and I'm like, no, I'm going to do it. And I got fatter and fatter and fatter. And I was just like unhealthy, and I couldn't walk, and I couldn't get out of bed. I mean, there was times I'd be crying because I'd be like, I need to go to the toilet. And the energy just to go to the loo and back, it wiped me out for the day. It was that bad. And I've had to slowly claw myself back. But the big thing was, when I left that job, it was like chosen a different timeline. I'd finally just admitted I wasn't in alignment with it anymore. And it's like I've really kickstarted this healing journey. And that's kind of what happened on that. A bit of a long-winded.
Yeah, you kind of got a response here from my loving other half. Big hugs, Sam. I know this one too. My mom signed up for a trial treatment. After they got what they wanted from her, they left her to suffer. And she passed. Right? So you touched on something as well on Steven's show, I think, about the spiritual aspect of what was in the juice.
Yeah.
And I actually, that triggered something in my head that's kind of been kicking around when you guys were talking about that, and I want to get your take on it.
Okay.
I did a whole research paper on how much digital DNA digital data you can store in DNA, and it's something like 18.5 billion years. Okay. There's also a lot of people that believe that there was technology in the serum that they administer to a large portion of the population. Do you think that that's to further down the road be able to reprogram our DNA, exactly what they're trying to do?
So I got a massive hit as you were saying that. You're so activating, Don. I just want to say that. Yeah, it's metallic. So it's the thing I was getting was, I think it leads into this transhumanist agenda that people talk about. And I often go on a bit of a rant about this lockstep thing. So they bring all this stuff in, they brought the COVID in, they brought loads of fur in, and what that essentially did is it was make people more malleable. It made people more receptive to a cashless society. It moved on these agendas of like these 15-minute cities. And everything that's progressing is like planned to slowly erode our freedom. And I think with the jibby jabby, what we do is we give up our sovereignty when we take it, because we're basically saying to the universe, I'm not sovereign enough to heal myself. So I'm outsourcing my ability to heal to the entity behind the jab, because obviously it's got an egregore behind it. It'll be attached to something else. So you're giving your power away to not just the medical system, but the egregore of the jab. And you're essentially causing a massive soul loss when you do that, because it's on a spiritual level, it's really jarring to the soul. And when you have something like that, it creates like a crack in your auric field and a space. So your soul gets lost at not all of it, obviously, but part of it. At the point where you do that in the timeline. So this is why soul retrieval is really important if we're going at it from a shamanic point of view, because you're bringing it home. But to bring the piece of soul home, you have to heal the trauma, because it has to feel safe enough to come back into the body. And the trauma is, you're basically programming yourself, I'm not safe, I can't keep myself safe. And then obviously on a more physical level, there's the adjuvants and things that are in there. I mean, I've seen things, apparently there's like parasites in there, there's nanotechnology in there. Obviously there's the technology to change the DNA. It goes into the cells and replicates itself, essentially. It attacks the immune system. And when people are getting really poorly, it's because it's so out of alignment with their natural state that the body is like kind of malfunctioning, in my opinion. Obviously, that's just my opinion. Yeah. But I really believe it's priming people for this next transhumanist AI agenda, because when you start to lose this soul loss, you're checking out. So not only are you becoming an organic portal in a sense, so whatever wants to come in can come in. So I had this experience with my dad, because my dad had the jibby jabby, and I'm in the kitchen, and something, his eyes changed. and I felt it. Something had actually gone into him, and he started shouting at me. But it was like an actual psychic attack, and I could feel it in my energy body. And I was like, ah. And the way that I stopped it was I had to stand in my power and say, no, stop. I don't accept that. And he did. And it like broke the spell. But it took me 2 days to recover from that, because what had ever come through was so fucking strong. And I'd never felt anything like it at that point. So it turns people into organic portals as well, essentially. But yeah, so that's obviously priming you for this transhumanist agenda, because you're giving your power away, and then you're merging the consciousness that you've got with the consciousness of AI. And I think this is the slippery slope that we're all kind of going down.
I think you're absolutely right. And since we're on the subject of healing traumas, this is another one that I think I sent to you. I've experienced this, and I'm just going to try to explain this because I want to get your take on it. After you heal traumas, there's sometimes what I would call empty guilt, right? It's that somatic response to, oh my God, I'm late. Oh my God, I've done something, or I have to go back and check that. And we feel guilt and shame for things that we're not even programmed to feel anymore. Because, like, I think that's largely in part with those of us in this spiritual collective that are as aware as the ones that we tend to be around are at the point of healing our own traumas. But you still get that somatic pang that, oh my God, I did something terrible just because I had to do something that took me 2 extra minutes. I feel shame. I feel guilt. And it's like, fuck off. I don't even feel that. Why is that there? Like, it's a physiological response, not a psychological response. Right. And like, I'm having this argument, like, I'm the pilot, this is the body. And I'm like, body, what the hell are you doing? Like, we don't even feel guilty about that. We're doing what we're supposed to be doing. Right. And if I didn't do that, I'd get yelled at by my boss, or I'd be stuck in traffic, or there's 9 other reasons I'm doing things the way I'm doing. But it feels like, because of the programming my biological form received in younger age, it's still reacting the way it's expecting to, even though that shit's not there anymore.
Right. But it's not there on a certain level, because you've become consciously aware of it, but you've still got the pathways. And this is, I put a little tweet out earlier, and I always like to remind myself of this. We're healing, we don't heal in, we don't heal and then we're done. We heal in a spiral, and it becomes thinner and thinner, until it comes to completion, basically. So what you do is you're peeling layers of it away. But what I've come to find is with trauma and these kind of pathways that you've built them up within your it's a nervous system issue, but you build them up within your body, basically, these pathways. And it's like an energetic impulse that goes through, like you said. You've still got something attached in your body to this trauma, essentially. So that, I think, probably the thing I'd probably say is fascia release. So you need to do an actual physical exercise and intention to move it through you. Reprogramming with new habits. So we're saying to Steve, like, brush your teeth with your other hand, walk in a door backwards, and just do things out of the ordinary. And what that actually does is it moves you out of like these states of like patterning and routine, and then you can reprogram your brain by, you can use like affirmations, or you can do things like meditation, where you go in and you can use like a visualization of maybe like some geometry, and you, with your intention, put your intention into the geometry, and you can actually put that in your subconscious to reseed your subconscious with like new information, basically. But yeah, it's a really big question. Is that done, to be honest?
Yeah.
Is there anything, was there another angle that you wanted me to kind of look at it for more?
Well, since we're already halfway there, I guess we could turn into what's been going on in the group. Is there's been a lot of energetic attacks and things like that going on. We know there's things that exist outside of our perception. How would you suggest that people protect themselves? Like, you've seen the nonsense I go through, you know what Steven's going through, you've heard about, well, Diana just said she's been feeling guilt and shame for the last week in the chat. Like,
yeah,
our little community alone just sits there and compares notes about the bullshit that they are trying to pull. But for those at home that are listening that don't have a cool little collective soul group to hang out with and bounce things off of, how would you suggest that they protect themselves and better be aware of what's going on around them that we can't see visually?
Yeah, I mean, I want to just go back to that guilt and shame thing because I didn't quite touch on what I wanted to say. So you tied it in really well. You can have outside stuff that's coming in. So when you start to do this work, you realise that you're not your thoughts. You're the observer of your thoughts, and the thoughts come from lots of different streams. Some of them are nefarious. Basically, there's entities that are there. You know, they're just trying to subvert you, to feed off you. Basically, they want to loose you. So it's becoming aware of the thoughts. And what you can actually do is you can feel into them and say that, is this actually me? Do I really think this? But if you're having a visceral response and something's playing on you, just say thanks. Say thanks for that. I love you. You've showed me something in me that I need to look at. I'm not going to get angry with you. I'm not going to get pissed off with you. I'm going to send you some love because they fucking hate that. Lots and lots and lots of love. I love you. I love you. I love you. And then they soon bugger off. But you've really got to mean it. And if you can't love it, what you can actually do is you can, if you go into your heart center, you can pull love from source, God, whatever you want to call the creative life force that runs the universe. It's woven through everything. You can pull that through you as like an energetic substrate almost, and you can send that out. And they hate it. They absolutely hate it. So that's a really good way. Running that through your auric field, having really good grounding practices. So if you feel like you're spiraling, because sometimes if you're not in a good place and you're a bit, we all have them days where we're just a bit out of sorts, aren't we? Stuff could have happened, and they do that on purpose as well. They manufacture situations that's going to like put you in a heightened nervous system state, because that's how they get you. When you're in that course, that fight or flight, you're in survival mode. So you're stuck in your lower chakras basically. And what happens is you move from being consciously aware to your unconscious programs, because you're going into autopilot and you can completely check out. And that's what they want you to do, because when you're checked out and you're numbed out and you're not fully aware of what you're doing, you can go a full day and go, shit, it's tea time, what happened? And there'll be something that's like triggered you earlier in the day, and it's just made you lose conscious awareness, and you've just gone back into that automaton, or just going through the motions, you know. So practicing presence is a really good thing. Just being present of where you are, just, you know, make it a practice. When you become aware of where you are, just go, oh, I'm here. This is my body. Feel into your body. These are my feet. This is my hands. This is what I'm doing. What's going on inside me? And it just pulls you back into the now, because that's where we create from basically. If you can stay in the now, whatever's coming at you, you can look at it objectively, you know. But if there's these heavy like emotions that are attached to it, it's trying to break that pattern. So a really good thing you can do, I mean, it's absolutely batshit bonkers, but it works. So one of the shamanic ladies that I used to do meditations with, she said, what happens is you need to confuse them basically, because they're used to the normal. If you start making weird noises, going like whatever, like cheese, blue, onion tart, whatever, and then you start making weird jerky thingies, and you're moving out of that normal programmed patterning, you just kind of, one, it makes you laugh, which is the best medicine, because it completely clears your field. And two, it just confuses the fuck out of them. And they're like, I don't know what's going on here. I've got no control. It breaks the thought pattern. It breaks the spiral, and they bugger off. And you can get control of your mind again. Because the problem is, when you start to spiral out, it gets harder and harder and harder to pull yourself back out of that emotional well, doesn't it? I think that's the thing. It's just training yourself to be aware of what's going on before it gets too far.
I absolutely agree, and it's actually a term that Spinja cued me in, and I've lovingly pirated into my own use more and more, is being creator beings on autopilot, and that's what they want. That's what most of society is, and has no idea how capable and how, like, I'm listening to Lee in the chat, like, this man just went through a huge medical procedure but still holds down the belief that his body and his mind will heal him better than the medical system ever will. And god damn it, I gotta say it's working, right?
And that's sovereignty for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We absolutely, I've shared this story before, but I have 2 broken teeth in the front of my mouth. They've been there for 6 months, and I was in agonizing pain, and I went into a meditation, and I was like, okay, what? Like, I went into that molecular state that you were talking about. I went
Yeah.
right up into my teeth, and I was part of them. I'm like, what? And they're like, stop the sugar and we'll stop the pain. And I was like, what? And they're like, you stop all the sugar, because I was a junk food junkie, and I had a snack drawer like beside my bed, and it was all candy, right? That's why my teeth got bad. That's why they broke. But I had this conversation with my biological universe, and they said, you stop sugar and we'll stop the pain. And I shit you not, the next day after we made the agreement, my teeth haven't hurt since.
And have you held up the agreement?
Yeah. I do divulge in the odd can of pop and a spoonful of sugar in the 1 cup of coffee I have now, but I have completely changed my diet, and my body couldn't be more happy, because, as people know, I almost died because of the way I was eating last year. So
Yeah.
that was another hell of a good reason.
I mean, obviously, yeah. I'm all for life, and that don't be popping your clugs done. Do you know what I mean? You've got work to do.
I'm collecting NDEs like kids collect Pokemons, and I'm about over that game.
I mean, yeah, I wouldn't really want to be in the playground trading them, would you? Yeah, have this NDA. I'll take your lightning strike, and I'll raise you this whatever.
Yeah. Oh, have you drowned yet? No. Okay, I'll give you drowning.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Something you just kind of touched on there, and I know it's something you and I have in common, and I'd love to hear a little more about your missing time. Just because I got this from our producer here at FKN, is, comparing notes is how we figure things out. And I've caught a bit of it, but that's the problem with my job. I can't catch everything through speech to text. So if you're able to share, like, when you started experiencing missing time and what you think it's related to, because I am absolutely fascinated by the subject, because I've had several within the last couple of years.
All right, okay. I mean, I think there's several different reasons. I know when I've talked to Steve about it, he seemed, which I'd kind of, when we had him on the Metaphysical Phat Podcast, he touched on some kind of experiences he'd had, and I'm like, you went to Pocket Dimension, didn't you? And he's like, yeah, I think so. And I think this is what's happening. They're taking you outside of time. And the reality of the time that you experience there doesn't match up with the time that we're having here, which is why you can go off and it's like, people take DMT and stuff and they're like, oh, it was like I was in hell for eternity. And they probably were, but then they come back and it's like nothing's ever changed, because, they might have lost 5 minutes or an hour or whatever. So I think that's what's going on. I think in like relation to, we'll call them our extraterrestrial friends, for want of a better word, or interdimensional beings or whatever. I think they give us the missing time to let us know that something's happened. So we've got like a marker, conscious marker, but it's like we can't fully process the experience that we've had. So a lot of the times I've had these missing time moments, I can't remember what's happened, I just know that something strange has happened. I mean, I had one instance. I'm a trained medium. So I was doing my training for the Spiritist Church to be a medium. So we'd go in the night and we'd do all the stuff. And obviously you're in an altered state. And then I came out and I just had this knowing. And do you know when we talk about these telepathic pings, it's like, oh, go outside, we're going to see a spaceship. It was that kind of a thing. It was like a telepathic thing. It was like, something's going to happen, be aware. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was driving home and it was nighttime. And I drove by this garden centre. There was this big bush, and it was like everything just slowed down. And I looked, and there was this frigging huge white owl, and it was just absolutely massive. And as you, I don't know if you know, they're pretty rare, white owls. You don't tend to see them.
Yeah.
And it was just hovering. But the weirdest thing, Dom, was there was a light above it just shining down on it because it was pitch black. And like somebody put a spotlight on this owl, and I was just like, that's a bit weird. And then I drove on a bit, and I was like, oh, there's half an hour gone or whatever. I can't remember how much it was. So something had definitely happened there. And I know, like, because you've mentioned that you've told people about Dolores Cannon, so I know you're familiar with her work. She spoke about that kind of stuff. You know, they would often appear as birds or animals or whatever, because it's a way to put like a screen memory in your mind, because your mind probably can't fully comprehend what's going on. So it has to find a way to deal with it. It's basically the lube, if we're going to say that. It's the lube that eases the experience into physical reality, so we don't crack our psyche.
You just triggered a memory. Like the exact scenario you just described happened to me while we were still living in Ontario. I even went back in and told Spinja, I was like, I just saw this big fucking owl. Like it was as big as Batman, and it was lit up from the ground. And we lived in the middle of nowhere, so it had no business having light shining on it. For fuck's sakes.
Oh my God, we've got a phone tingles. Well, you bloody triggered a memory of me earlier, and I was like, oh, SFB. I'd forgotten all about it.
Oh, and the reason I brought up the missing time thing is I've had several experiences with this subject too. And one of the most fascinating I just kind of put together. Sorry, Lee's like, now talk your lube or something. He's laughing about lube.
Oh God, Lee, you don't know me. I'm terrible. I don't take much encouraging to talk about all sorts of terrible things. Go on, sorry, John.
No, so what happened was I had Frank Castle on my show several times, and one time we were talking about missing time, and he explained it like what Stephen was talking about, how it's like a projection carousel, right? They can literally take the one single frame of time out and manipulate it for as long as they want and then put you back, right? Sometimes they accidentally miss by like a few minutes. I've had that happen, and I was an irritable asshole for like a day, right? I was out of time. And sometimes they'll put you back exactly where you belong. Sometimes, like what you've experienced, it's an hour. I was driving into the city of Calgary after Frank and I had talked a few months before and had a show that night. And I texted Kyla, I'm like, you would not believe all the ships over the city of Calgary right now. And, you know, of course, they're just clouds, but they were ship-shaped, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, there's like a fleet over the city of Calgary, much about the size of this. So I end up throughout the day missing 20 minutes that I have a blank spot. I still don't know where it went. So jump ahead a few more hours, and I'm setting up with Frank. I'm like, dude, I saw ships over Calgary, and I had 20 minutes of missing time. He's like, when? So I pulled up my phone. He's like, that's when I had to have a nap, and I saw you on the ship. I thought that was just a fucking dream. He brought his wife to the camera, and he's like, did I not have to, like, he got knocked the fuck out and put to sleep, and I had missing time at the same time, and he saw me on the ship, right?
Wow.
And, like, because we were talking about it, it's like, oh, you guys want to see it? Watch this. We'll put you together. There. You want to talk about it now? Like, that's actually how we started that show, because we had talked about missing time on the show before, and then they gave us some right before the show.
But they do that. They prime you. That's the thing. And do you know, we were talking about the cogs, and I've been shown that reality and everything that's kind of working, it's like this intricate clock with loads and loads of cogs, and they're all turning perfectly to make it work in time, you know, to make reality keep moving its wheels based. And that's kind of how I see reality now. Just loads of cogs, all different layers, keeping things moving, and it's like this huge big weave. But going on to the thing where you were like going out of your body and it goes to sleep, that's happened to me so many times. So I think it's actually when you're being taken out of your body. So I've had several experiences where it's like I'm being pulled under. It's almost like somebody's given me like a spiritual roofie, basically. or that I've been spiritually chloroformed. It's that, it sounds terrible, doesn't it, really? But so I had an instance, I'd just gone through my awakening. I was living with my dad. I was in my room. And it's, again, higher self came in, I think, and was like, we're going to do this. And I was like, oh, okay. And it was like I'd agreed, but my higher self was guiding me. And I just said, okay, I accept my mission. Let's do it. It was like I needed to give permissions for it to happen. It was like that done. I was like, oh my God, I'm so tired. Fell asleep. Woke up in the exact same position the next day. So I'd been out all fucking night. And I woke up and I got these flashes, and I can't even really remember it now because it's faded. But it was going to some sort of council and having some sort of debrief. And then I came, because it must have been higher, and I came back and it felt like I'd been shoved in the jar that was my body, and I was still trying to like acclimate to it. But the thing was, I was so hyper aware, my consciousness had been blown open so much. I was putting my feet, it was like I wasn't fully in this reality. That's the only way I can describe it. It's like I was in hyper reality. It's like everything was like hyper focused. I could feel every molecule in the carpet as I was walking. It was like, whoa. It's like my brain had got this, it was so expanded, it could like compute all these different things that were going on. And it's like my consciousness was still like being decanted basically into my body. I was still like, do you know what I mean? Different like fractals of reality that I'd been condensed back down into. I went in the bathroom and put my hand under the tap, and I could feel the water molecules of everything. And I was like, and I just knew it was, do you know what I mean? It was absolutely mind blowing. I mean, it didn't last very long because I acclimated back to reality. But I mean, for about a week afterwards, I was just like, I was, go on. So
I absolutely know what you mean. I've deliberately had no BE, and I woke up, well, I wasn't all the way back one time. We actually call him my night person. Like, I don't sleepwalk. I am completely cognizant, except I'm not conscious, right? Like, my consciousness will be somewhere else doing all the things that we talk about in the chat, right? But sometimes my body has things that it needs to do or things it needs to do, and it is completely coherent. Like, it can talk to Kyla, it can make a sandwich, it can go to the bathroom. But if you ask me about it in the morning, I don't know a damn thing because I wasn't here, right?
That's crazy, yeah. I mean, it's not crazy. I need to stop saying that. Sorry, John. That's very extraordinary. I think we're going to start saying that.
Yeah, no,
I'm wondering what it is though. Like, your eyes are open, you're talking, you're in a conversation, but you've checked out.
Yeah, like,
so it's like like your oversoul consciousness has come down and is piloting your vessel that is done, while you're off with your actual laser point precision of conscious awareness is being projected into a different reality.
Well, and that's kind of what I'm wondering, because you and I'm fairly new to this. You're fairly expert at channeling. That's actually where I was going with. That's actually where I was going with that, though, is I'm wondering if my consciousness is being channeled somewhere else, because I've told you, like, I've acted as my higher self while I was asleep, right? So much like I receive a conscious download, or I'll just start streaming information in the middle of a show. Like, I actually feel bad for my guests sometimes because my higher just takes over, and he is smart as fuck, right? And he just like, and I'm just kind of sitting there. But I'm actually wondering if that's what's happening, is like we're channeling into somebody else, like another version of ourselves. And that's why my blank is just here kind of wandering around the house.
Yeah, so I was talking about astral projection. I was talking about that guy called Robert Bruce. So he talks about the etheric double. So when you're having an out-of-body experience, you have your etheric body that you project outwards. And then your mind basically shuts off because it's like a protection mechanism. But he's had instances where he's gone out and he's kind of been jarred. So in his physical head, his awakening brain, because he's still connected to this etheric double that is projected out of his body, he's looking at himself as a projection while looking at himself as a human being. And it did something to his head. It happened a couple of times. And I think what's actually happening is we don't have the conscious awareness of the bandwidth at the moment, because I think that is changing, where we can hold these different concurrent streams of different realities. So you have to check out, essentially. So you're still there, but you're not consciously linked to the other bit, and you can only hold one memory. Does that make sense?
It actually does. It completely does. And that's like, I was going to say, I kind of got off on a ramble there on my night person, but no, exactly what you were mentioning before is I've woken up when I'm pretty sure I was in another state of my consciousness and been in that in-between state. Like, I physically had to shift my pilot back into my body because he was elsewhere. And then I woke up and we were waking up at the same time. And I was like, exactly what you're explaining. It was this odd feeling of like trying to push myself back into this. Right. And I was just like, holy crap. This, like, I was basically rocking on the edge of my bed. Like, I was like, okay, come on, let's go. I got to get all the way back in. I got to get all the way back. Come on. And then it eventually happened, but it was like this weird experience of being out. Like, I didn't get to go explore the house at all because it freaked me the hell out. But no, I understand completely when you're talking about being outside of the physical form and seeing the molecular structure, because I had to stick myself back into my molecular structure.
Yeah, it's jarring though, isn't it? That's the thing. It's like you're trying to hold two separate points of awareness when you've been conditioned by because this is what I actually wanted to touch on. I'm being prompted to talk about this. So where we see reality, because however we perceive what's going on, this is why some people are psychic, some people can see orbs, some people can see the frames moving in reality when you slow it down, because I think a lot of people are starting to see that now. You know, when it does, and you're like, oh, reality is just a weird thing. It's done it again. Because we've expanded our conscious awareness to a point where we can begin to perceive that. Because what I've noticed happened a lot of times, I'm seeing stuff and my mind won't accept it, essentially. So the more we can expand our bandwidth, the more our mind is able to accept what it's seeing. Because really, if we think about it, there's all sorts of stuff going on, because we talk about the visible light spectrum, which I'm sure we're all aware of. We only see a really small percentage of that. So there's all these other ranges that are going on. And obviously it's to do with density, and we're all overlaid, and it depends on how we're vibrating and which frequency we're at as to what we can interact with, what's physical and what isn't, basically. And the more we expand that, I think the more we're able to hold these different perceptions of reality, we'll call it. So that would fit into one kind of expression of that, holding more than one conscious awareness. Because I've read about the greys and stuff, and they can see all the way around. You know, they're not just like your eyes. Because that's another thing. When you astral project, you've got to get used to like not looking just because it's not a thing anymore. When you've gone out of the body, you don't just need to look through your eyes. You've got full awareness, because you're not actually looking with your eyes. You're looking with your consciousness, aren't you? And it's stuff like that that's really jarring, because you've then got to condense that back into this physical reality to make sense of it in your head. So this is what I'm saying, like with ascension, we're moving into a state where we can accept more, we can perceive more, because it's like our brain's allowing us to do it. Because like I said, I've seen stuff before that's happened. Like I've seen stuff flash in, and it's only like really quickly like that. And I've had to stop myself from just dismissing it. Because it will, that's what the brain will do. It'll just pretend it's not there, because it's breaking its programmed structure of what it believes reality is. And when you start to do that, the ego has a fucking hissy fit. It's like, no, we can't deal with this. This isn't what we want. This isn't what keeps us safe. So you've got your ego to contend with. That's like when I had my Kundalini awakening. It was like really jarring, because I was saying on Stephen's show, like I dissolved into the void, and you won with everything, and I was freaking out. So I had, again, this 2-point perception where I was aware of my body to my neck. I wouldn't let it go any further than my neck. And my head completely dissolved, and I was everything. all at the same time, which, as you can imagine, is a bit of a fucking shit show for your head when you weren't really prepared for that. I was like, oh my God. And I was absolutely having a freak out. Went on for hours and hours and hours, and eventually it just stopped. I kind of wish I'd not fought it now and just dissolved into the void and gone on a magical adventure, and my Kundalini would have probably been a lot better. But you know, you live and you learn, don't you? But yeah, that's the thing. It's the ego. But when I came back, what had happened is, because everything that I had believed was real wasn't, and I've had this massive expanded experience. It's like I still knew who I was. I was Sam. I was in this body, but I was more. And it's like it's like somebody got some, you know, spiritual bleach, scrubbed my ego away, and I had to rebuild it, essentially.
That's
sorry. You looked.
No, you've just got me deep in thought, because this is one of the areas that I love to get into, is this whole perception and perspective and light spectrum and all of this. And I'm just trying to think of the way to put it together in my head to be able to say it. I've asked it before. Do you think that part of the ascension is going to be that shift in perception? Because this is my personal opinion, and I think this is the easiest way to ask the question. Is personal opinion is eventually we're going to become imperceivable to people of a certain emotional frequency, and they're going to become imperceivable to us. And that's basically ascension and the separation and the split and whatever you want to call it. We know we can only perceive certain things. And I think you're exactly right. And I'm just wondering if that's where you're going, is like, that is the key to the ascension, the split, whatever you want to call it, is the perception of the things around us, because we're eventually only going to be able to perceive higher vibrational things, like where we're trying to be.
So, right, okay. I think when the point of ascension, in my opinion, and I've spoken about this before, Diana's been talking about the Heris Gamos and the alchemizing of the masculine and feminine. Basically, we're merging polarities. So when you look at the tree of life, you've got like the left-hand pillar and the right-hand pillar and the middle pillar, haven't you? And you're bringing the ends of reality, which is how I see the tree of life. It's all of reality, into the middle pillar. And the middle pillar is the Christ consciousness, or whatever you want to call it. It's that universal aligned love energy that is source consciousness, basically. And you're bringing that into the physical vessel. But when you do that, you are spiritualizing your matter. So it's an alchemical process, and you do it in the heart. So you're bringing the physical experience of reality, your physical vessel, up to meet the spiritual, what would you call it? We'll call it stream of consciousness, your spiritual aspect down, and you're alchemizing it into something new. And what I've been told is we're going to be the new spiritualized human, and we're going to be able to move between states. So it's a bit like, you know, solid, liquid, gas, depending on what's going on, you know, the heat. So if you change heat to frequency, depending on what frequency you're in, depends on what state you're going to be in. And I think we'll be able to move between them. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. And it just coincided with what Spinja just learned about natural law. So it does, like, it does completely make sense. And I know we've kind of touched on this, and I do want to get at this subject as well, is if somebody is just figuring out that they're receiving frequency, we've called it like broadband, or I always go like this because it just feels like that's the way it's funneling in. If somebody was trying to expand their reception of frequency from source, what types of life changes and activities would you suggest to open that channel better?
So what we're doing is, when we're on the spiritual journey, we're essentially finding out who we really are. So it's a process of unlearning everything that we think we are, so we can find out who we are, which is a spark of source. Basically, we are incarnated good consciousness creator beings. And we can say that and we can understand it intellectually, but to know it, you've got to know yourself. And this is where the practices come in. So it's things like, you know, it's going to be different for everybody. I did touch on this in Stephen's podcast, but, you know, that your meditation, your Kriya, your Tai Chi, your gratitude practices, with Tantra practices, whichever path you want to go on, it's cultivating the knowledge of who you are. And you do that by going within, which is why I started out in meditation. And I was telling Stephen this day. So when I first started meditating, because obviously we're all the same in our group, we're like 110%, aren't we, in everything that we do and do it to death. I was doing meditation for 4 hours a day. And during that time, what you're actually doing is you're stilling the monkey mind, you're cultivating presence, you're getting into your body and knowing it on a like you were on about a subatomic level, and you're essentially learning to control your consciousness consciously, and I think that's the key to doing it. Basically, it's knowing who you are through practice. Does that make sense?
It does. And I do think that's where I am. And I know we were talking about channeling earlier, and I know some people are like, I'm with my guides, I'm with the angels. Because I don't know a damn thing about this, I pretty much have put out the disclaimer, like, the only thing allowed within me is me, right? So
Yeah.
I will channel other versions of myself because I only trust my consciousness, right? So if somebody, another version of me, has something super intelligent to say and they're not going to be detrimental, I do just, you mentioned it on Stephen's show, it's like sitting in the back seat, right? And that's basically what happens to me mostly while I'm doing this, is I'll just be kind of sitting there going, wow, I sound really smart right now. And I'm listening and I'm talking, but it's a different I am.
There's more of you. Yeah. I get it. Yeah, I kind of missed the channeling bit. I mean, if they're wanting to specifically channel, like I said, you're channeling all the time anyway, because that's what's happening. We've got this consciousness being channeled into this, because I mean, if it's holographic, it's a laser pinpoint precision. It's a laser light show, basically, what we're having. It just feels real because of the density. You know, it feels physical because of the density of the vibration, essentially. So we're channeling our consciousness anyway. But if you're bringing things into, I mean, I would always put a disclaimer, like you said, Don. You want to have really clear intentions. You don't want to abdicate your sovereignty. You don't want to let anybody in. Doing the practices is going to know what's you and what isn't you, because that's really important to know as well. And you need to have kind of, it's like an opening and a closing. So, you know, they're in, they're out, you know. So I work with the guides. There's a collective consciousness that I think I can talk about that's within our soul monadic group that we're all in contact with, basically. And that's what I stream. But on top of that, just to make it really more complicated, so there's a group of us, we're all part of the same monadic group, and we've come in, we've incarnated, and we're all different fractals of each other, basically. It's like there's a big ball of sourdough, and we've all been like taken from the ball, do you know what I mean? And baked to be these people, but we're all linked because we're all from the same batch, essentially. So we've all got the same frequency, but that's linked to other things, and it comes down kind of like an upside down tree. You know, these little branches are all different parts of us, but we're all interlinked as well, and we've all had different lives together, or concurrent lives together, because reality isn't, it's not linear, really, is it? So what's happening is, yeah, we're bringing this information down. But there's other groups of entities, because it's obviously across lots of different dimensions, that have got vested interests as well for our particular group. And I've got to be careful what I say now. But like I've channeled some sort of it's like a collective of 9, basically. I forgot what they call themselves now, because I channel it and it goes out of my head. As soon as I've channeled it, it's gone. Yeah, but they're part of a greater council. And this council is like a huge, big spiritual council, and it's linked to lots of different groups that are incarnated now on the earth. And we're the boots on the ground, essentially. And they're like the logistics. They're telling us what to do. They're running the show. They're running interference when the other opposing side are like being knobheads. Do you know what I mean? It is like the multi-dimensional chess game. So when a bad thing happens, actually what's happening, and it might be bad, and we'll call them they, have put something in your path to thwart you. But then they'll be like, oh, okay, so we'll turn this into a positive, and this is going to teach you this about yourself, and it's going to take you to this next person who's then going to give you this really other important information. Can you see it's like a weave? It's all orchestrated beautifully, and this is why I say it's like this clock. So there's all these different entities and all these different groups and it's absolutely mind-blowing. And I don't understand it all myself, John. But that's kind of what's going on. So I channel a lot of that as well. But I think what's happening is because I'm already aligned with that frequency. And when I went off, I was telling you before, when I was like, right, okay, I accept my mission and I went to this council. That was it then. It's like, right, okay, she's in the game. She said she's going to do it. So, let's prime it. And that's what happened. I think I was primed to the frequency, and I started channeling by writing to start with, and that opens you up. And it's just trying to get out of your logical mind. I also had an energetic upgrade where an energy went into my head, out through my Bindu chakra at the back, circled back round, and then went down to my heart and out my hands. So when I'm channeling, when we have people in the Metaphysical Phat Podcast, everybody that comes on gets a massive dose of healing, whether they want it or not, unfortunately, because that's just they get what they need, not what they want, which is an understanding joke between Kirsten and I. So do you know what I mean? And whenever there's any like you and I, we're having this interaction now. We've all got our channels going on. They're here. We know yours is there. I know mine's here. And we're having an energetic exchange because we've got our biofields are non-local, essentially. Yeah. So my biofields merge with your biofield, and it's having a little conversation that we're not consciously aware of, and we're upgrading each other, basically.
That's really cool. And I absolutely love the sourdough analogy. I'm sure Stephen does as well, because both of our lovely partners make sourdough, which is absolutely delicious. And I bring Stephen up because, like, him and I are definitely a chunk out of the same bread. Like, I swear I'm finding, like, fractals and doppelgangers since I've started becoming aware, because it's like, he and I are much alike. Another friend, her husband and I are almost identical to one another physically and our upbringing. And it's just like, this is insane. These people look just like me. These people had the same experience as me. They've run the same life. They have the same understanding of things. So when you say like that, just breaking off of bread, it's a great analogy. And I think that really resonated.
Awesome. Well, I'm sorry for going a massive long waffle though, John. It's like, I just go off on one and it just comes out and I can't stop it until it's ready to be.
My show may as well be called ADHD because it's the same damn thing. Like I have a notebook and I have subjects, but I just kind of scratch them off as I'm going. And it's like, so I know on Stephen's show, and you mentioned it briefly on here, we don't need to get into your actual experience, but I like to come at some of these subjects from a 101, like a 101 basics. If people didn't understand what a Kundalini awakening was, what would the best description you would be from your own experience without divulging too much? Just what are the signs? I don't want to say symptoms, but what goes on?
I mean, you do get symptoms of spiritual psychosis, I'm not going to lie. It's different for everybody. That's what I'm going to say. It is different for everybody. I was, like I said, Stephen said, I got a lot of like heat in my back. So when I had my awakening, when I came more and more online, I started to notice that my hands were really hot. And I had a Reiki session, like where I was inducted into Reiki 1. And I had this really crazy experience done where after I'd had the first day, because they attune you, there was all sorts of stuff going on. I could feel all this movement of energy in my body. And what was happening is it was clearing out all my nadis and all my energy channels and realigning me with like a different frequency, basically. And that opened me up as well. So that primed me, basically. Then I was doing the meditation. And I was doing basically a tantric meditation, and I cleared a big block in my sacral chakra. So if you've got any blocks in your chakras as well, the energy can't get up, essentially. But you could have just a spontaneous one. So people have even fallen over and banged the bum, because it's basically the coiled serpent, they call it. It's at the base of your spine. And it is that you feel it like viscerally. When it happened to me, it was like this pressure just went straight through me, straight out my head, and it was like, oh my god, but it was, looking back in retrospect, I'd been primed for a really long time. I was getting heat in my spine. You can have like kind of hot flashes, and that's when the energy start, because you can have like Kundalini. Without a full Kundalini rising, you can have like an awakening where it's in your body and the energy's starting to move. So if you're doing things like Kriya Yoga, which is Kundalini Yoga, you're working with moving that energy up that channel, and you're clearing it out basically. And that's, a lot of the yogis in like the ashrams and stuff are working towards, and they've got this really disciplined life. They eat well, they've got clean thoughts, clean body, clean mind, all that jazz. And it stops this kind of like jarring process. But in the West, we're not primed to do that. So you might have all this energy stuff going on. I think every Kundalini is meant to happen. I think if it wasn't meant to happen, it wouldn't. But it is going to look different to everybody. It depends where you are in your journey. It depends how clean your vessel is. It depends what trauma you've got. Have you had because you can have a partial rising as well. So saying you've got the Sushumna, which is like the channel that goes straight up. And then you've got the Idya and Pingala, which is the masculine and feminine polarities, and they go like this, like in a figure of 8 through it. So you're not just rising through the Sushumna, you're merging those of masculine and feminine in the central channel. So if you've not had a complete rise in one of them, which I found out was with me, my masculine energy didn't rise properly basically. So this is what I'm having to do now after the fact, is go back and clear that and balance it. And a lot of people, once they're on this journey and they've had a rising, they'll go and they're doing a lot of practice, because what happens then is you get spiritual psychosis, your life falls to pieces, all sorts of stuff can happen. You have this ringing in your head, all sorts of stuff, and you have to balance that then. And you have you can have like a second rising essentially, where it just sorts you all out. Does that make sense?
It does. And I'm going to take Lee's question from the audience, but is that basically like that whoosh? Is that the cerebrospinal fluid that Steven's always talking about? Like, does that have to do with that, or is it more energetic? Like, is it a literal whoosh, or was it a?
So the spinal fluid is the medium that the energy moves through. Okay. It's like a substrate, and that's just my opinion. Yeah. But because you move the spinal fluid and it creates an energetic kind of vortex, doesn't it? So when you're doing like the the bit where you squeeze and you're moving it up, aren't you? You're putting, because there's exercises you can do to do that, and what that's doing is it's creating a channel basically. But I think it's the energy is like the overlay, but obviously on a physical level, maybe it is the fluid. I'm not 100% sure on is the honest answer, but I think from my own interpretation of that, that's the medium, because any fluid is like the lubrication between the physical and the non-physical, I think. And it also creates the pressure, so it puts pressure on the pineal, which then activates your third eye and your greater perception of reality.
I think that tracks. And like, as you were explaining it, I was like, this feels like it's the cerebrospinal fluid. That's why I asked, because it seemed like that was related.
It goes up the spine. Yeah.
Sorry, you'll know what I'm laughing about. I'm not sure if there's a helicopter over my house.
Oh, fuck's sake.
Yeah.
Hi.
Like, William just kind of poked his head out. Anyway, I don't give a fuck. Yeah, it's over my house.
There was an engine too. I'm gonna go have a look.
Yeah, anyways, sorry, this is meant to distract and it's not gonna work.
No, it's fine. Send them out. Send them out with a one of them torches.
Yeah, that's a helicopter. but there's no such thing as targeted individuals.
Oh no, it's all made up, obviously.
Yeah. So, anyways, I'm gonna get to Lee's question here because fuck them. Have you heard of emotional vampires?
Yes.
Yeah. I know we
Absolutely.
have. And do you want to give a breakdown of what they are and how we can defend against them?
Good. That's a loaded question. So it's basically what's happening is when you're sovereign and you're connected to source and you're in a fairly normal healed, I'm not going to say completely healed because we never really are, but when you're in a fairly regulated state and you can manage your own energetic, but what was the word? When you're self-sustaining your own energy, basically, you're linked in, you're not leaking it all over. You don't need to take energy off of the people. You don't need to use because from an emotional vampire is somebody that would, I'm assuming this is what it means, that would use their own emotion to invoke like empathy and things like that to feed, when people like trauma dump or all that, and they want to get an energetic hook into you. It's like an energetic straw, and they're just like, oh, you're delicious. Come on, feel sorry for me. My mum died when I was 23. Do you know what I mean? But they can't sustain their own energy, basically, because they've got trauma. They're leaking their energy out, or they're abdicating the sovereignty, because that's the thing when you've got any kind of crack and these entities are coming in, they're eating you, basically. They're eating your life force energy. And that's why you can get very poorly, you can get very tired. And obviously it's a lot with like narcissists as well, because they need external validation, and that's part of it as well. So that's why if somebody is very empathetic and not well boundaried, because you can be empathetic but well boundaried, so you don't let people over, they don't encroach on your boundaries essentially, and that's how you stop it, because you're saying no, you're not letting them get into your field. But what they will do is they'll try all sorts of different tactics to make you, because when you're empathizing with somebody, like we're talking about those biofields, you're pushing your biofields out into the other person. And what you're essentially doing is you're meeting them in the middle. Now, if they're basically vampires, they're going to suck from you. But if you're well boundaried, you can go and meet them energetically with empathy, but you're not letting them come into your field, essentially. And you do that by just being really sovereign, like going, oh, okay. So like, for instance, say if you're in like a group situation and somebody's like, oh my God, I've done this and blah, blah, blah. And they're really I'm not saying you can't be negative and you can't talk about things, but they do it in a certain way to trigger an emotional response. And it's the emotional response that has a charge, basically. And that's how they get past your defenses, because you're then being an empathetic person, you're leaning into it, you're meeting them with your own energy, and then it's like they've got you, But then if they go on and on about these things, what you can say is like, oh yeah, that's great, or that's horrible, or whatever. Have you tried, doing this? Have you tried doing that? And rather than just giving them loads of like sympathy, what you're actually going to do is give them questions for them to sit and analyze their own shit, basically. To make them take responsibility for what's going on. Not in a horrible way, but you're not having to enable them then. You're not giving them your energy. You're making them sit and question themselves. And 9 times out of 10, they'll just fuck off because they can't be doing that.
I think that's bang on. Like, they won't stick around. Even if the empathy is cut off, they have nothing to feed on. So and he had said that's a great answer. So I totally agree. There was an update in the chat. Just to clarify, that was an air ambulance. That was not my helicopter. It's just kind of a thing. We've been talking about it because anyway. But yeah, that one wasn't mine, so it's okay.
Oh, we're all good.
Yeah.
That's
but
good.
That shouldn't even be a conversation. But anyway.
I know, right? It's just like when you're actually having to sit and think, well, is that my stalker or not? Oh, it's an air ambulance. It's all right. There's something fucking going wrong with your life, don't they?
Maybe you're onto something and it's bothering some people.
Yeah. Absolutely. Sorry, Dom, if I've blagged you there, because I do waffle on quite a lot.
No, I was about to say, I know it is super late there, and we're coming up on 90 minutes already, which doesn't seem like it again. But I am going to say I have your counterpart on next week, and then we're going to be recording one Saturday with Spinja and I on the Metaphysical Phat Podcast. So do you want to tell everybody where they can find your guys' stuff, where they can find you, where they can find Kristen, and all of that great stuff before we take off?
Cool, yeah. So you can get me at arts_fantastic, and my handle is Samantha Consciously on X. Kirsten's Kirsten Mustaine. She's at Wonder Awake. We've got a Metaphysical Phat, put my teeth in, Metaphysical Phat Podcast. Not podcast, I'm sorry, Don. It is late. Metaphysical Phat X account as well. Don't ask me the handle because I don't deal with it. Kirsten does all that. You can get us on YouTube, the Metaphysical Phat, and yeah, that's about it really for now.
Okay, and most of that, well, half of that is in the description. I think I have your X, your YouTube. That might be it.
Kirsten's on next week anyway, just so you can.
Yeah, we can add the links on then. And I want to thank you. That was absolutely fascinating, and you had the audience absolutely engaged. They were loving everything you had to say because you were just sharing knowledge, and I think that's why we're supposed to be here, and that's why we have these conversations. And this one was another absolutely wonderful one, and I want to thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Don. Pleasure. Yeah, and it was great to have a good chat with you. I'm looking forward to next week.
Oh, I am as well, because we're just going to continue with this, and then we can get into my crazy life and how I got here, because, you know, these people have already heard it on my channel a whole bunch of times, so they don't want to hear that shit again.
Brilliant.
Aside from that, I want to thank everybody who participated in the chat, everybody who listens to this later, and aside from Sam, because she's going to go to bed. Like I always tell you guys, if you can go outside, please do, because it's a lot better than sit in front of this screen. Love you guys.